soon realized that it wasn't working. I still felt bad. And at times I kind of was upset about it, but then I started to analyze my life even more, and I took another step back, and I looked at things, and I realized that the only time that I really, at that point, felt connected to God was when I was serving with with the family ministry at the church that I was attending in Kokomo. I didn't really do much. I got out of bed early. Our rehearsal started sometimes at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I would go and I just ran lights. But that time when I was running lights was a time where I just felt so connected. And while I was doing that, I specifically felt God telling me once again that you're right where I want you. Well, time passes and I continue to do this week after week after week, and some things changed with my job and I wasn't really happy, and I found a job in Kokomo. So I take my family and we moved to Kokomo, or to Lafayette, I'm sorry. And as we make this move to Lafayette, my job's going better, things are getting better, but the depression just keeps getting worse. My lows are a lot lower, they last a lot longer, and at this point I'm just not sure what to do. At that point, I had discovered Lafayette Community Church, and I had been in some discussions with Jeff, and we kind of had some similarities on some things we did in Kokomo and some vision things that we kind of met on it's a middle ground, and we were able to just continue talking about these things. I started running sound, which from time to time is a little shaky for me too. But the important thing is once again, I just felt like God was telling me this is where he wanted me to be. Jeff then asked me to be on the advisory team. Once again, at this point in my life, I'm thinking, I'm depressed, I'm having all these problems. What good can I do in a situation like that? Well, what I soon found was I found myself trying to come up with an excuse every Tuesday night of why not to go to this advisor, why I shouldn't go to the advisory team meeting. Most nights I just drug myself over there, and I went. At this point, I'm still not even sure if I ever had anything important to say during those times. But the important point I want to make with that is I just really felt God still telling me that this is exactly where he wanted me. Well, for myself, it was really easy to revert back to my religious ways, my checklist theology, to start checking things off day by day. It didn't work for me. The nice thing about the Christians in Smyrna is they specifically stayed faithful. When we stay faithful, Christ promises us very specifically, if we don't take that easy road, if we stay with him, that this brings us to the next point, that this is where our true reward lies. And continuing verse 10, be faithful even to the point of death, and I will give you the crown of life. See, it requires faith, and God promises the people in Smyrna the crown of life. Now, the crown of life is another one of those terms that specifically relates to the people in Smyrna. Their Acropolis, or their fortress that set high upon a mountain to protect it at one time, was called the Crown of Smyrna. They were also known for their games. Like our modern day Olympics, where the victor gets the gold medal. At that time, they were given what was called a victory wreath. It was just a wreath just woven together, but the important thing here is the crown's value lies not in its physical worth, but what it actually represents. It represents victory, which is the next point that I want to make. Not only does this crown represent victory, it represents eternal life. If we move on to verse 11, he who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who overcomes will not be hurt at all by the second death. When I first read that, I was quite confused. The second death. Wasn't really sure what that meant. I had to put a lot of study and really work into some details into that one. I learned that specifically refers to Revelation 20:14, which is printed here on your sheet. Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death. So if we go back up to verse 11, where it says, not hurt at all by the second death, we can fill that in with lake of fire. So then, verse 20 would read, then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire being hell. Death and Hades were thrown into hell. As I got to thinking about that, I was always taught that Hades was hell. Once again, I had to go back and do a little bit more research, and I found that many times when it was used in Revelations, it referred to the grave. So then that turns and reads that death and the grave were thrown into hell. Ultimately, what this leads to as I was doing this study is our final point there, that if death and the grave are thrown into hell, all that's left is eternal life. It's a victory. It's a victory for each and every one of us. I'd like to finish sharing the rest of my story with you. So as I was going through this time, depressed, just really trying to make it through every day, it just got so bad where I couldn't take it anymore. Through a friend of a friend, I found another physician and made an appointment, which for me was just a huge ordeal. I had been with doctors, I had seen a psychologist, I had seen a psychiatrist, none of them had helped me, and everybody just wanted to increase my antidepressants. So I went and met with this lady, and we were talking, and we went through a whole history and kind of how I felt at different times in my life. And at one point she looked me right in the eye and she said, "I think it's your antidepressants that are causing this." I think it's like, it's my antidepressants that are making me depressed. So I kind of milled that around in my head for a while, and she went on to say that, to describe that the serotonin levels that the antidepressant is actually supposed to impact, if you get that build up, it'll make you feel tired. It'll make you feel just fatigued all day long. You won't sleep well. You won't be able to exercise. You won't be able to function at work. And you'll be hungry all the time. I was like, okay. She got me at that point since I had to answer yes to every single one of those things. And she changed my medications, and we changed some dosages, and we mixed some things around, and we found a combination that works for me. And I have to tell you that the last 4 months have just been an amazing transformation in how I felt. I've been more effective in every aspect of my life. I've been more effective at work. I've been more effective at home. I've been able to lead our small group, and then that's also what put me up here today. So I want to encourage everyone here today that I tried to stay faithful even when it was hard. The people in Smyrna stayed faithful, and they still were there to get their reward. It's important to understand that we will each get our reward. Every one of us will have a victory. I don't know when that victory is coming for you, but I can guarantee you that if you stay faithful, it is coming. I know some of you today can relate to Smyrna. You're living your life every single day and just trying to follow what God and Jesus are trying to tell you to do. And for that, I commend you. And I think Christ would put his arm around you and say, well done. Then there's another group of people that are out there that are doing and using this checklist theology. They're just going through the motions every single day. They're reading Bible, praying, they're going to church. They're doing things just in and around their lives that look kind of religious, but they do it without passion, and